Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show, and welcome back to another game review. This time, I'm going to review something I've wanted to check out for a good while now, a little bit less than a year. A book by a pretty controversial character at sometimes, um, none other than Total Party Skills. Today I will be reviewing Vintage Future RPG. Now, to be honest, I have not finished reading every single page of this. I've got a little bit left to go, but so far I think I pretty much get the gist of the mechanics and the stories he's trying to tell, except for Science of the Sphinx and Ancient Egypt Conquers Mars. I still have those two left to finish, but I have already gone through the entirety of Escape from Planet Matriarchy, We Want Soviet Men, and Rocket Cadets in the 11th Dimension. Now, right off the bat, as a lot of you know, I'm a big fan of things like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon and a huge amount of the science fiction and pulp from the early days of pulp all the way up to the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, and of obviously the 80s. Most of the stuff that came out in the 90s and later haven't really grabbed me much. There are a few things, obviously, Babylon 5 and Firefly and things like that. But this book, right off the bat, hit me with Joshua's, let's just say, unique sense of humor, which goes along with my own in a lot of respects. Now, I know there's going to be a whole lot of things that Joshua and I don't agree on outside the gaming table, but at the gaming table, there are far less things I think he and I would disagree on. Who knows? I have yet to meet him in person. I've chatted with him a few times. I think we chatted on Max's show at one time, but I don't remember. I could be misremembering that just because I saw the episode and was in the chat, and you know how things get when you're my age, it all just sort of jumbles together. But like I said before, his sense of humor and view on certain things I really liked, especially the sort of Barbarella-esque sort of tongue-in-cheek, not taking it too seriously, but still trying to have a good role-playing session. And of course, our good friend Shauner highly recommended this entire work of his a while back, and that's what sent me down this rabbit hole. The true essence of pure role-playing really appeals to me in a lot of ways. Mind you, I still understand that we're playing a game, and there are going to be some mechanics involved, some die rolling, and some things that go along with all of that. You are playing a role-playing game. It's not just a pure role-playing situation, which there are many we could go into. But the overall gist of it, when Shauner told me this was probably one of the best role-playing games out there, I absolutely had to jump in and take a look at it. I really appreciate some of the ways he alludes to things, but leaves it up to you. Some of the names of the types of robots and things like that in Planet Matriarchy really gave me quite a chuckle, because I could see how you could look at it in a lot of different ways, all the from PG all the way to fade to black, and depending on your play style, a little bit more risque if that's your cup of tea. I know it's usually a bunch of dudes sitting around a table, so that thing isn't real, popular, let's say, and without it getting weird, it's kind of difficult, and I like to leave it to the imagination. The fade to black idea is always the best policy, in my opinion, unless I'm playing a game and it's nothing but females, and then who knows, right, guys? No, I'm seriously, actually kidding. Now let's take a look at the actual rules system itself. It's probably less than 20 pages of actual rules out of a book that's probably, yeah, well into the 500 pages. And you could probably sum up all the rules in 10, 20 pages, depending on the font and you know, that sort of thing. It's, I'm not going to say overly simple, but it's just shy of that, leaving everything condensed down to more or less its purest form in getting things done, whether it be combat or skill checks, things like that. Basically, from what I understand, is you're going to be rolling a number of d6s depending on your attribute score, of which there are 3, body, mind, and something else. I think I can't believe I forgot that already. But you get the gist. It's very similar to other tri-stat systems, and for the most part, your stat is going to be between 1 and 3, 4 being, I think, the highest at first level. They can go higher, obviously, later on, but you've got to earn experience points to get to that point. And then you'll be rolling a number of dice. Let's say you want to punch somebody, and you've got a 2 or 3 in that stat, so you'll be rolling 2 or 3 dice for that, and then adding your skill level, trying to reach, or I should say exceed, a difficulty. And I like this because it jives with my own difficulty system in my percentile-based thinking, where something, if something's an impossible task, it would literally have a minus 100% on your difficulty. But here we're looking at easy, average, hard, very hard, and impossible. Easy is a 3, average is a 6, hard is a 10, very hard is a 14, and impossible is an 18, which, you know, on average, if you're really lucky, you might have 3 dice to roll plus your bonus, say on average a 2. So you're looking at, you know, 2 or 3 dice plus 2 to get to an impossible task of 18. It could happen if you had the 4 dice and a plus 4. That's not so impossible, so it would clearly inspire you to try to pull off some crazy maneuvers or actions that otherwise you wouldn't think about doing, because you just know that there's no real chance of doing it. So on average, hard difficulty with 2 dice plus 2, needing a 10, 2 dice plus 10, it's not going to be, you know, a common occurrence of making that difficulty. But as you go up, or you stick to your obvious talents, your chances are going to be, you know, at the very least, fair. Now, that pretty much sums up most of what you need to know about the rules. You might have 3 hit points as from your health, 3 or 4, maybe a few more. Weapons on average do 1 to 2, 3 points of damage. So you're going to be able to get hit a couple of times and then need to run for cover or seek medical attention. And the same goes for your mental and the stats like that, where if you're taking, you know, sanity damage or stress damage, things like that, again, you're going to be able to take a couple hits, and then it's time to, you know, jump back and, you know, consolidate your forces, get some cover, get some medical attention, get some therapy, as the case may be. And from that point, you know, needing X number of days to recuperate after that, to get those numbers back into, you know, back to full. So with that being said, you can see how it's really not going to take much to teach this game to your fellow players, if that is in fact your desire to teach this game, or to play this game, or to run this game. It's a piece of cake. It makes for a great beginner game for people who've never played. I wish some people I know would have started with something simple like this, as opposed to some of the other crunchy games that are out there. I definitely don't think crunch is the way to go with your first experience. Get people in, with something simple. That's why some of the original RPGs were pretty loose, pretty fast, with the learning curve and the ability to get stuck into the game without having to memorize a bunch of things. You know, as Jade says, if you can fit your character sheet on an index card, you're on the right track. Now, mind you, those are all the good things. There are a few things. Well, actually, one last good thing I want to mention before I forget: the artwork. The artwork, for the most part, appears to be pulp magazine covers and artwork from days gone by, which I absolutely love. Seeing the old style and their interpretation of what the future is going to look like, considering some of the artwork, I'm guessing, is well over 50 years old, and we still don't have our flying cars. And I'm not going to, well, we kind of do. If you if you look around, there are some devices and vehicles out there that are starting to come out that would give you the the best we're going to get for flying cars for a good long time, until we figure out actual anti-gravity, but with props and hovercraft and things like that. But I digress. Those are the things I really like about this. I'm also thinking this would make for a great excuse me, pulp game along the lines of Doc Savage and The Shadow, your two-fisted, hard-boiled detective sort of games. I'd like to see something like that from you, Josh. If you haven't already done that, feel free to run with it. Now, as for other games, I really don't know how this would work in a fantasy situation. It's obviously going to need a lot more rules for things like magic and things like that. Psionics would be another toughie. I'm sure you could probably just interchange a lot of those rules, plus or minus your spell components and things like that. Superhero game, that's where I think this system would be the most difficult to incorporate, because you're going to need a huge book, probably half this size, just to go over all the different superpowers, if that's your gig. I don't know if you're a big superhero game fan. I actually am a fan of several superhero role-playing games: Villains and Vigilantes, Heroes Unlimited, and now I'm playing Vigilante City. I really like those kind of games, but I also am a big fan of westerns and sci-fi and fantasy. Now, the only complaint I had with this was gear and equipment. I'm a big fan of everything from tools to magic items, and that section in here is the one flaw I have, or the one little thing I wasn't a big fan of. I'd like to see more. Saying someone has a toolkit, to me, that's not enough. I want to know what's in the toolkit, because I'm going to use each tool differently. Not always for its intended purpose, mind you. I never leave the house without my Swiss Army knife, my regular knife, my tear gas, my keys, my phone, sometimes binoculars or a mini telescope. A lot of different things that I take out with me on an everyday, just go into the store. You never know what's going to happen, and you can't imagine how many times my little Swiss Army knife here, it's actually not very little, it's got a magnet stuck to it, is actually come in handy from the very first moment I got it. And every little tool on here has been used for its intended purpose, as well as others. But again, I'm digressing. Tools, equipment, guns, vehicles, all that stuff for me is a big part of what I like about role-playing games, is thinking of ways of using what I have on hand, not just my skills, but whatever is on hand. You can ask my son. He's seen me do some crazy things with ordinary objects to come up with extraordinary results. Ask him about the Vienna sausage can someday, and he'll go on for a good 20 minutes on that particular, improvisational thing I had to do for one of our crafts a long time ago. So, Josh, next time, maybe, not necessarily, you don't need to list every single tool in the tool shed, but a little bit more in the way of what the characters start with. Starting with one item, I was, to me, just a little too little. I would have spent the first half hour of gaming collecting all kinds of things, even rocks and sticks, which I would then later on use for things. Starting fires and making tools out of things around me is something I've studied for a good long time. So that would just be the one thing that I would maybe work on a little harder, giving people a little bit more to work with, or at least giving the descriptions of said items the ability to be used in multiple ways. The classic episode of Star Trek where they use the phasers to heat up the rocks to keep warm, that kind of idea. I know that's usually something left to the players to improvise with, but giving them some clues as to what it does. I don't even put a video game in my PlayStation without reading the instruction books, or at least that's the way it used to be when I would get them. If I buy something, I read the instructions backward and front a couple of times. I want to know all the things it can do, what it can't do. And believe it or not, the things it can't do are sometimes just as helpful, so that you don't make a huge mistake, or that you can think about later on how you could actually use that to your advantage in a given situation. But other than that, this was a really fun read. I'm glad I got this. I'm going to go look through the catalog and see what else is in there from our friend over at Total Party Skills, see what else might tickle my fancy. Probably going to stay away from the fantasy RPGs, because not only am I not really in the mood right now, but I've got literally like 50 of them. And, right now, I just, with all that's been going on lately, the last thing I want to do is sink my teeth into another fantasy role-playing game. Not you, Fritz. I'm still in your game. Don't sweat it. You too, Bruce. Just grabbing another book that's another take on something that I've done for close to 45 years now. Send me something, send me in the direction of new worlds and new settings and new ideas, besides new ways to make up a wizard or a fighter in a medieval situation. I've done it literally thousands of times, and this was a breath of fresh air. Now, it doesn't hurt that I just recently picked up a order of miniatures from Hydra Miniatures called Retro Raygun, which are chock full of Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, John Carter, Warlord of Mars, Mars Attacks type of miniatures, which is something I've been really in the mood for last couple of months at least. And of course I will eventually jump onto some new genre real soon, probably Western, seeing as how April's coming up, and you guys know how I like to do Westerns in April. If you haven't seen our Western months, we've done a couple in the past, and we'll probably do another one. April's coming up. So until next time, folks, if you're in for some vintage future sci-fi role-playing, I definitely recommend grabbing this for no other reason other than to get re-inspired. The artwork, the take on it, the way Josh writes is really easy to digest and get into, and get inspired and enthused to do something old in a brand new way. So until next time, thanks again, Josh, for hooking me up with this, and for everybody else out there, you guys have a great day and happy trails.